Are you in control of your life, or do you feel like you're mainly along for the ride? In this episode of the Wellness Champion podcast, we'll be talking about your growth mindset and your fixed mindset, because you have both.
Yes, and in this episode, we are going to be talking about two key factors that affect you changing your mind. Welcome to the Wellness Champion podcast, sponsored by Healthy Transformation Nation. We believe that your health and wellness is determined by your own self-care more than anything else. Join us for each episode when we discover and uncover the keys to self-care in today's complex culture. We enjoy helping others discover the best ways to be well. We'll be visiting the basics for self-care and ongoing wellness that enables you to not only survive, but to thrive. On the Wellness Champion podcast, we'll be exploring the fundamentals of intentional breathing, your hydration, nutrition, intentional movement, and your wellness mindset. The Wellness Champion podcast is your time for a mindset reset. So there are things that you can control, and there are things that you do not control. There are things that you have influence over, and there are things that you do not influence.
Okay.
And there are things that you are concerned about. And that's up to you whether you should be concerned or not be concerned. But so there's concern, there's influence, and there's control. We're going to be talking about your mindset. Now, what is a growth mindset? A growth mindset is believing that you can change your thoughts or behaviors. A fixed mindset, on the other hand, is believing that you can't change your thoughts or behaviors. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, when I think about the fixed mindset that you were talking about, I felt a lot of my life that everything was happening to me. I had no control over it. I was trying to control everybody in my life, and I felt completely out of control. I had no control. And that sounds counterintuitive. Like the more you're in control of what's happening around you, you're out of control. And that just doesn't seem like it would be a truth, but it is. It's a huge truth, because the one person that wasn't in control of was myself. I wasn't in control of me. I wasn't in control of my thoughts. I wasn't really in control of decisions I was making. I was going with a lot of emotion and a lot of things that were happening in the moment too, instead of taking a breath, looking at it from a perspective like a 10,000 view perspective, or even just in the moment of any perspective other than just this narrow vision. I couldn't see anything. I could only see things that one way, and everything was happening to me. I was not in control of anything that was happening in my life. I was just kind of like this victim of circumstance, and I literally lived most of my life like that because that's what I was taught. I was taught that you got to take care of everybody else. You have to do X, Y, and Z. And you know what? Things just happen, and you just got to accept what happens. And how it happens and the way that you see it is just the way it is.
That sounds a lot like a fixed mindset.
Very fixed mindset.
Now, a growth mindset, on the other hand, is where you have a bit of a different outlook, right? And we'll get into, I think we could probably get into how growth versus fixed mindset can affect your outlook.
Right.
But the things that you do have control over and don't have control over in a growth mindset are much more well-defined, I guess you'd say. Okay. In other words, there is your locus of control, we call it. Okay. What you have the ability to have under your control. And for a person with a fixed mindset, their locus of control is limited. It's fixed. You know, you don't control certain things. Whereas in a growth mindset, it's much more expansive. You have an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. So the external locus of control is where everything's happening to you.
Right. Oh, definitely. That sounds like me.
And the internal locus of control is where it's like, well, I'm creating this. I'm making this happen. If it's happening, then it's because I made it happen.
Right.
That's your internal locus of control. And everyone lives on there's a spectrum there.
Right.
And everyone lives in one place on that spectrum.
Right.
Well, I guess I shouldn't say they live in one place. I mean, it's dynamic. I mean, it can change from time to time, but in general, some people feel more like things are happening to them, and other people feel like, this is what I'm creating, and if it's not what I wanted, then, well, I did that.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like taking responsibility of it too.
It's a lot to do with that. Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like responsibility is a huge part of that. And I can tell you, I was perfect at the blame game. I was a blame game kind of gal where everything was everybody else's fault instead of my own. And so my locus of control was the external. Everybody, this is all happened. I don't have any control over it. This is what's happened to me. You did this, so I did that. And because of you, this is what happened. And this is like the story of my life for quite like 40 years, I could say, was pretty much like that, where everything was happening to me and I didn't have control over it, and I had to just deal with it. And just the blame, everything else was to blame except for me. But it was interesting because the one common denominator was me. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that was a huge thing when I started understanding and realizing the differences between the fixed and the growth mindset.
Right.
This wasn't something that happened overnight. It was definitely something that was gradual, but the difference between how I think now compared to then, where now if things are happening, I can look at it and say, okay, what is happening in this moment? What's actually going on here? How am I going to respond instead of react, because I used to react and now I respond to things. And that made a big difference, is just in the way that I responded. If I reacted, that was more of a place for me of blame, and I was not in control. When I'm responding, I'm taking a breath, I'm taking a moment, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking about it, and I can make better decisions with that. So, I mean, the fixed and growth mindset has to do with, we can talk about responsibility, decision making, which is huge.
It is huge. One might be asking, so here at Healthy Transformation Nation, we're all about wellness, right? And
Absolutely.
we have our Wellness Champion experience where we help people become the better self that they would like to be. And why then is fixed mindset versus growth mindset so important in this experience?
Well, when you want to change things about yourself, how do you change?
Right. You need to take control.
Right.
You need to take control.
Exactly.
So,
taking control of yourself instead of everything else.
Right.
That's that internal locus of control that you were talking about. Because before I was trying to control people and situations in my life. And when I was doing that, I was actually in a place of judgment of what I felt should actually be happening, of what I felt should happen in that moment, and the way that I felt that things should go.
Right. Yeah. And, one of the things that we say is that, we are taking control of our healthcare.
Yes.
Which is about self-care. Self-care is, you are the one in charge of your healthcare. Right. You are in charge. And that's a prime example of where the first breakdown comes from within that fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And, I think that extends to many aspects of your life. Not just your wellness or your healthcare, but there are so many other things in your life. I mean, there are so many things that you have control over right now that many of us maybe are not really in touch with how much in control they really are. How much effort you put into something, how many times you smile or say thank you or show appreciation today, how well you prepare for something.
That's a great one, Bill. When I think about school and being in school, which I am right now, and having businesses, I'm doing a lot of things in this podcast, all the things that we're doing. And I can sit there and say, I have so much to do that I can't do X, Y, Z, or I can come from a place of like, I have so much to do. How am I going to make this work in my schedule? How can I set it up so it works and I'm able to do the things that I truly want to do and some things that need to get done?
Right. Yeah. And speaking of which, you are in control of what you focus on.
Absolutely.
But here's one that I really like that applies to what we're talking about when we're talking about wellness. And that is how you respond to an emotion that you're having. So emotions come at you without notice. All of a sudden you may be that's what we say about being overcome with emotion, right? Emotions come at you all the time, and you may not be expecting these emotions, but there they are. You're hit with this emotion. How you respond to that emotion coming into you is under your control.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing that I think that probably escapes most of us. I mean, I know that that's happened with me.
Absolutely, me too.
Yeah.
I get so overwhelmed and overcome with these emotions that I can't even think straight. And that used to be it was a lot of the time because like I said, so many things were happening and it wasn't just one thing. It was like a culmination and it would be, building and building and building in my life. So I had a lot of things that were going on in my life that I just felt totally a victim of, and I didn't have any of that control. And living in that space, living in a place of feeling like you are a victim, you do not have control of your life. You feel helpless, and you can feel hopeless at times too, and very lost. And that is because you're trying to control things that you really don't need to have control over. And that's everyone else. Now, I'm not talking, obviously, with children, you have to take care of your kids and you have to have some sort. But then even in that, they still have their opinions and their thoughts. And how far does it go? That's another thing. That's another thing to consider. But with our children, for the sake of children, we'll keep them out of this discussion because that's a whole nother discussion to have. But for us, we can control on a daily basis how we respond or react. Like you said, it's those emotions that can come in and they can overcome us. We can respond or we can react. We can react right then and there, or we can take a step back and think about what we just heard.
Yeah. Take
that pause. There's so much power in the pause.
There is, yeah. And I can put this into like, a real life example. I used to eat my emotions. I mean, literally, I would eat food in response to having an emotion. And I know that you can relate to this. I know that everyone can relate to this in some form or another. And for me, there were several go-to things, but one thing would be frozen yogurt. Used to say, have a saying that frozen yogurt fixed everything. It was the cure for everything.
Right.
Well, I mean, when you really look at that statement, that's a silly statement, but it seemed real because I had emotions that were. Maybe I didn't want to deal with them. Maybe I didn't want to break down that emotion and really think about it or give energy to it. And so instead, I reacted to that emotion by turning to the food.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I had food addiction for 40 years. And I also, which I didn't realize at the time, is I used to use alcohol as well. That was another thing that people use, is they use alcohol. And that was a huge thing that I used in my life. And I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing. And when I released that was when I started actually having control over myself. That's when I started connecting with me and kind of waking up, getting out of that fog, because food is very tricky too, because food is something that we eat all of the time. And when you're talking about having a situation, Bill, where you were, eating your emotions because you were feeling something and you may not have wanted to feel it at the time, you wanted to anesthetize it and you used the frozen yogurt. even in that, is that something that you necessarily need in that moment, or is it something that you want in that moment?
Right. Yeah. And that goes right back to, and so we can take this.
Do we really need frozen yogurt?
Actually, no. We can take this all the way around full circle and say also that I am in control of how I take care of my body.
That's true.
And so if perhaps I am eating the wrong things due to, my emotions, I am in control of that. I really am. And so what I expose myself to, what things I tell myself, how nice I am to myself, those are all things which I am in control. So one asks oneself, do I want to be nice to myself?
That's a great one too. Do I want to be nice to myself?
Yeah. And you are in control of being nice to yourself or not.
That is very true. I had a narrative running in my head for like 40 years again, that I was a loser and I hated myself. I would tell myself these things all of the time. I was the prisoner, the jailer, and the warden all in one. So I literally beat myself up all of the time over every single decision. It could be something very simple. And I was questioning myself and beating myself up over the decisions that I've made, whether it was happening in the moment or it was in the past. And when you're living like that, it's a really tough place to live. It really is, because you're just in this constant state of judgment of self. Really, really harsh judgment. And that's how that fixed mindset really was very harmful to my person, as a person, my overall being. It was very detrimental. And I got sick because of the way that I spoke to myself and the way that I treated my body. I got sick with cancer. I got sick with a lot of other things that happened in my life because of my decisions that I made and the way that I was talking to myself. There was literally, there was no win-win in the way that I would speak to myself. It was like, you're wrong, you're crap, you're garbage, you're a loser. And to have that narrative running through your head on a constant basis like that, it is very detrimental. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because that was huge for me.
So it's important for us to recognize what we have what influence we have over ourselves,
yes,
what control we have over ourselves and what we do, and also what we don't control. And there's always, we have to have that, we have to make that distinction. We have to identify in every situation pretty much in our lives, whether we are in control, whether we are in influence, whether we are concerned. And you can be concerned yet not have any control over what it is that you're concerned about. Or it can also work the other way too. So there's a lot of dynamics working there, but basically there are things that you can directly control. There are things that you can influence, but maybe you don't control, but you do have an influence. And there are things that you have no control and no influence. And so those are the things that you really need to kind of be evaluating on a real-time basis all the time.
Yeah.
And that will help you get to that space where you have that internal locus of control. Now, the other thing that is a key part of a growth mindset is your bias toward action. So there can be a bias toward action or a bias toward inaction. Some people are go-getters, people call them, right?
Right.
Other people wait for things to happen. And so your bias toward action is very important to your growth mindset.
Yeah, I had a bias not to do anything. In that inaction, I missed out on a lot of things in my life because I wouldn't make that decision to do the things. And then, of course, the things that I did do, how did it turn out? And there goes the judgment again. So you get back into that. So I definitely feel that I had bias toward inaction a lot of the time because I was always questioning. And then you get stuck again in the looping and the ruminating in your head over your decision again and again.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you realize you have control over it or not if you're not going to do anything about it.
Right. Right.
So whatever it is. So, yeah. So your action or inaction has a direct result.
Correct.
Yeah. Yep. So basically we have we focus on what is our locus of control? Is it internal or is it outside of us? And then the other thing we have is our ability or our tendency toward action or not toward action. And obviously a bias toward action is going to enable, empower, give you that growth mindset. When you're able to take that action, that's your growth.
And that can be overcoming fear in that moment, because a lot of the decisions that we make can be around fear. I'm not talking about, the coffee or something, making a decision whether I want coffee or not. That's not going to be a fearful. I'm talking about life decisions that you're making. It can make a huge impact. Absolutely.
Yeah. Although even with your example of whether I have coffee or not, now let's say that I know that caffeine is something which is not a good thing for me to ingest. It doesn't promote my wellness.
Right. For you personally, that's not something that you absolutely.
Yeah. In fact, actually, when I was younger, I was told to avoid caffeine because it caused acid reflux. And or it contributed to acid reflux.
Yes, and heart palpitation too, which can do that as well.
Yeah. So, however, if I am if I am not biased toward action, I will just simply keep drinking my coffee because I like that coffee.
Right.
It tastes good. I like the feeling I get from it. All of the sensations that come along with that. Those are things which are happening to me that I would enjoy, and so therefore, what action is there for me to take except to continue to indulge?
And that I actually like that you said that you brought the coffee thing up, because that's a really good point. I'm glad that you did bring it up, that fear, because fear can come in that, even in coffee, giving something up, like not having something that you do in a routine can be fearful. It can stir that up. It can cause a lot of anxiety, the unknown. How am I going to react?
Right.
Am I going to have headaches? What do I do if I do have a headache? Maybe I won't have a headache. Then what do I do? Where do I get my energy from if I'm not getting it from my coffee like I normally do? So I really love that you actually we touched back on the coffee, because it can be.
And you know
something
what?
like
All
that.
those questions you were asking, as you were asking those questions, I was thinking to myself, these are the questions that people just don't want to go through in their head. It's easier.
Yes.
It is easier just to simply continue to have things happen as they were.
Yeah, I agree.
Than to wrestle with all those questions.
Right. Because it does, and that's part of the growth.
Exactly.
Growth can be a little painful from time to time. Like when you were a kid growing up and you felt the growing pains in your body, we feel growth obviously in a different way now, where we feel it a lot more emotionally. And so I love that we're having the discussion. Even something as simple as coffee can make such a difference in your world, whether to have or not.
Yeah, and I like the fact that growth there is some work with that. There is some work involved. There is some effort involved with growth.
So why would I want to do that if there's going to be pain, there's going to be effort? So why would I want to move over from where I'm at, which I know and I'm comfortable with and I'm familiar with? Why would I want to go?
Well,
somewhere
I think
else?
that some of us a lot of us actually are in a loop where we are wanting a better lifestyle. We are wanting those things that are out there that we see that is appealing, and that's what I want from me. But then we're in this loop where we deny ourselves that through our inaction, through our fixed mindset. And it's this continuous loop. I want that, but I can't have it. I want that, but I can't have it. I want that, but I can't have it.
Yes. Wanting, that desire, that longing, feeling empty, always wanting, always wanting. Well, why can't you have it?
Well, you can have it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can. When you open up your mind to your growth mindset, it is all available to you.
And that was probably the biggest challenge for me, is to get into a growth mindset. And it actually happened when I was walking. I started doing a program, and I was walking for 45 minutes, and I happened to be doing an IG live. And here I am talking about how I'm like, I do not want to do this. This is out of my comfort zone. I don't want to. I was crying. Like I was literally crying inside of that comfort zone and saying, but I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore. And that was a huge turning point in my life, because I made a declaration. This is not what I want. I do not want this anymore. I do not want to feel this way anymore. And pushing through, it was painful. I was crying, like I talked about. It was painful. It was emotional. I was crying. But I got through it. And the other side of it was, it was the fear that kept me from moving forward. It was the fear of the unknown. It was the fear of having to do the work. It was the fear of maybe some physical, pain too, because it was 45 minutes walking. But the other side of that was the achievement, the accomplishment, the way that I was able to push through that, and I became in control of me instead of those emotions having complete control over me and taking me down that rabbit hole, or allowing my emotions to take hold of me and take me down that rabbit hole. I took control of I felt the emotion, which is something that you talked about, not feeling the emotion, so you'd stuff it, and I used to do that too. I felt the emotion, and part of it was because I was live. I was literally feeling it in the moment and sharing it with people, and then I'm able to see what I can achieve when I break through that.
A perfect example of how results are driving the success of your growth mindset.
Yes.
Results are going to primarily drive your growth mindset, and so.
But I want to say that the thing about that is that I couldn't see the result. I just had to get through that moment, and that's a huge thing. If you're looking to just to get to the result. That's where you miss that's where you miss the lesson. You miss the gem, because it's going through it, that process, those emotions, those feelings, whatever it is.
Now, does that have anything to do with your perceived locus of control? Maybe you perceived that you did not have any way to because you couldn't see that result, right?
Correct.
So maybe it was your perception that you weren't able to control that result.
Well, I felt like I knew that there was something doing the walking. I knew that what would happen is I'd feel like wellness would happen. I figured that would probably happen, working out and stuff like that. But because it was out of my scope of comfort that I had been working, because I've been working out for years, this was something very different that I embarked upon. So it was unknown. It was uncomfortable. It was very draining. It took a lot of energy. And so I only had control over the moments, not over everything that was happening. I just had to be, and it taught me to be in a state of presence.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Because so you actually used being in presence, being in the moment to help you through that perception of your locus of control.
That's correct.
Where you did know that you controlled that moment, and that's what you were anchoring yourself, your growth into, was, okay, I control this moment, so and you're going to build from this moment to the next moment to the next.
You got it. That's it. That's exactly what I did. And because you can see it on the IG. The IG is still live, is still up there, and it shows you me. It will show you me going through all of it in real time and how I was processing in my mind. And I still do this to this day. Now, the process today is a lot faster because I'm doing it on a consistent basis, the way that I think and speak to myself, of course. So it was very different then, but we all start somewhere. We all have a starting point. And for me, that was my starting point.
I love that you recorded that too. You have it. You've documented that so that we can all go to that Instagram. Which go ahead and we'll. What's the Instagram account?
Healthy Transformation Nation.
Yeah, so it's on Instagram, Healthy Transformation Nation. Go ahead and you can look at if you scroll down through the history of posts, you'll see Nicolette's journey documented there. Great, I love that you did that.
Me too.
And
looking back on it, oh my gosh, I could see where I was in my thought process. Like I remember those feelings, and then seeing it even a year later, I cried because I thought, wow, because of this one moment, things have changed so dramatically. I don't think like that anymore. I don't live in that space anymore. I don't live in a space of feeling so out of control, so outside of my comfort zone. Now, I do get outside of my comfort zone now with other things, but it's not as tough to do it. I can lean into it a little bit more. I'm more like, oh, this isn't so much, tough. This is a challenge. Let's go for it, where it's more exciting instead of scary. The unknown is more of like, ooh, what are we going to get? What adventure am I going to have today? More about that. So that's the difference between how I would think from that point to this point to now.
Wow, I love that perfect example of developing how you can develop a growth mindset. You can go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and you can do it intentionally. That is
100%
beautiful.
It is possible.
Now, something else that I would like to encourage everyone to do is we've put together something. It's a little bit of a quiz. So if you want to find out, if you want to like test whether you have the fixed mindset or the growth mindset, go ahead and head over to htnforyou.com and go ahead and take our quiz on your mindset quiz, your mindset test.
Awesome.
And it's kind of fun, and it'll let you kind of give you a little bit of insight whether you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So there is a few things about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset that could be some misconceptions. One misconception is that no one is either 100% fixed or 100% growth. People are a combination. People have both a fixed mindset and a growth mindset working for them, with them, against them, along with them. It's dynamic and it's happening all the time.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. I mean,
so don't beat yourself up too hard over it. It's just looking for ways that you can grow and learn that growth mindset.
Yeah, and also people's life situation. The situation that you're in has a lot to do with that too. It has a great impact on how a person views themselves as well as how they view others.
Yes, absolutely.
What else? What other kinds of misconceptions are there about growth mindset?
The big one for me is that being open-minded and just having a positive attitude.
Yeah,
I was like, really? Okay, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a positive attitude. In fact, I always said that, whenever, my favorite answer to the question when I went to an interview for a job, when they would always ask this question, what's your best asset? Or how would you attribute your success? What one thing would you say has contributed to your success? And I would always say my attitude, because I believe that to be true. That my attitude has a great influence over my success on the job. So I've always had a positive attitude, and I have had people in my life who really look at me like, what the heck is wrong with him? And they would say that, well, that's all well and good, but I live in reality. I live in the real world. Things aren't all that rosy and things aren't all that positive. I'm in the real world. That's not the way it works.
Which reality are you in?
Right. It's actually, now my answer to that is it's actually whatever the reality is that you create.
Correct.
If you create a world where everything is, negative and everything is going not your way, then that's the world you live in. But if you create a world where, you can look up and be grateful for the sky is blue and there's wispy clouds going by and it makes you happy, and that there is just, everything's going to go your way because you create it, then that's your reality.
And there are some situations that we don't have control over, like you talked about the locus of control. So things that can definitely come into your path, but how you, again, respond to that, react or respond. We get back to that. So that's a huge one. So I really love that you brought that up. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I loved this discussion today, Nikilette. It was awesome.
Yes, I did too.
And you know what? I just want to leave you with this. Go ahead and go to htnforyou.com. And if you haven't already joined our community, go ahead and join our community there. We have a community of like-minded individuals who want to make wellness their lifestyle. And when you do, you'll see on our homepage there'll be a link to a quiz that you can take about your growth versus fixed mindset.
Awesome.
Hope to see you there.